Good morning, Jamaica. Those of you who are joining me on Bridge 99 here from Kingston. And good morning as well to the diaspora, to our Jamaicans in New York, who may be tuning in to us on Irish Jam. Good morning to Beauregard as well. I'll talk to him a little later. Today is May the 8th. It's a Monday morning. Well, Monday afternoon now. And we are back here to do Jamaica Live on Bridge 99. It's a program we do every Monday. We're a discussion program. We try to identify issues that we think are important to us as a people. And we delve into those issues with persons who we feel can bring value to our discussion and to our understanding of those issues. And today is just like every other Monday when we come here. We're going to be talking today about what I think is a very important issue, something that we really need to be concerned about. That's what we do every Monday. It's Jamaica Live. We're on Bridge 99. We are on Irish Jam. You know, each month, every year, this month, the month of May, is observed as Child Month. It is a time when we focus special attention on the state of our children, their care and well-being, not just materially, but also in terms of their emotional needs. Childhood is perhaps the most important period in one's life. It is during that period that the building blocks of personhood are laid. The temperament, the character building, the socialization, the inculcation of values and attitudes. Not to mention, of course, all the stages of academic learning. And you know, that is more than enough to attract our attention, to command our focus. Sadly, that is not all that we have to be concerned about. Increasingly, we have to be concerned about the physical protection of our children. Children always have to be protected from causing harm to themselves, like playing with knives and putting harmful things in their mouths, or being careless on the roads, climbing mango trees from which they sometimes fall. I remember as a child, I climbed a number 11 mango tree one time and fell down and broke my wrist and had to be rushed to the Kingston Public Hospital. But in recent times, we have had to be increasingly concerned about the physical abuse that many of our children suffer. We have seen too many cases where parents or guardians to whom children should look for care and love and protection, but they are instead the purveyors of ill treatment and brutality. There have been instances of adults beating the daylights out of little children, burning them with a scorching iron. What on God's earth can cause a human being to behave like that? What can cause a mother or a father to tell a 5-year-old, "You're too rude. You're not getting no dinner this evening. You must go to your bed hungry"? You know, what What can cause somebody to do something like that? But it has gotten worse. Look how often we hear of children being sexually assaulted and sometimes murdered and their bodies dumped somewhere in the bushes. You know, I've tried to figure out what other than severe mental derangement could cause someone to cut the throat of a little child or to bash its head with a concrete block. Yet that is what has happened to some of our children. You know, some animals take much better care of their offsprings than some of us do. And we are human beings. Yesterday there was a ceremony at the Secret Gardens. That is the spot at the intersection of Church Street and Tower Street, where in 2008 a monument was erected in honor of children who had been murdered. It came about following the abduction, rape, and murder of 11-year-old Ananda Dean, who hailed from Whitehall Avenue. Since then, the names of children who have been murdered have been enscrolled on the wall of that monument. And 2 years ago, the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation told us that they were running out of space and the wall would have to be extended in order to find space for the names of more children who had been murdered. We are a murderous country. But why on God's earth must children be among the targets? What can we as a society do? What do we have a duty to do? Today we want to examine the institutional arrangements for the protection of our children. But the institutional arrangements alone won't do. The police can't be expected to be in the room or in the house when the man is about to put a knife to the throat of a child. The police can't be expected to be in the room when the sexual pervert is zipping down his pants front. It requires a broader and all society response. We need to find a way to get it into our heads, into everybody's head, even the head of the most demonic amongst us, that children are out of bounds. They must be untouchable. They must not be carnally abused. They must not be murdered. What must we do? We're narrowing the focus today. This month is Child Month, and there are many issues that we could talk about. The care of our children is a broad issue. Preserving the lives of our children is our narrow focus today because so many of them have had their lives snuffed out brutally, heinously. That's what we're talking about today. The protection, the safety of our children. And we have some very interesting people that we want to talk to about it, to understand the extent of the problem and to see if we can identify how can we address it. But before we even get into our discussions, is Beauregard online? Bo.
Good afternoon, Mr. Golden.
What happened, my friend?
Here enjoying the great weather that we have been waiting on all year, sir.
Every time I talk to you, your first response is about the weather.
Yeah, because it's starting to look that way. It's starting to look very summerish.
Look how many times I tell you must just pack your grip and come back home and you don't have to talk about weather.
Boy, may I tell you, I would love to do that, sir, but so many things to take care of on this side of the world.
How you been? You been good?
Yes, sir, we've been very good. Other than the fact that, some things that bother us and it continues to bother us are the mass shootings that we continue to see happening across the United States.
Yes.
Recently in Texas on Saturday, there was another mass shooting.
And then there's this car that mowed down some of the migrants.
I'm telling you, man, it's getting very, very crazy, and I hope it doesn't really get any more crazy.
Almost every time I tune in to CNN or MSNBC, that's what I'm talking about. And sometimes when I tune in and I see them talking about it, I think it's the same one they were talking about yesterday.
Exactly. And
but then them tell me no, it's a new one.
Yes, always a new one, sir. And this month is also Mental Health Awareness Month, so we have to really and truly check up on our loved ones and make sure people are okay. And
you can forgive me, Bo, but
yes, sir.
But I am not prepared to accept without evidence this business about mental problems, Some of them people just wicked.
Yeah, true indeed. True, you have some really wicked people. A lot of these mass shootings, I wouldn't say they are all mental related, but it is a situation, it is a case, especially after the COVID-19, sir. We see more and more cases where people really and truly don't know where to turn.
And then, of course, you have your NRA and your Republicans who are not prepared to deal with... I heard some numbers yesterday. I can't believe that they're really true. I heard a guy on CNN or MSNBC, I don't remember which one, who said that there are 300 million people in America, but there are 320 million guns.
Wow.
Is that serious?
The number would be somewhere high, very high, sir, because this is a gun country, this is a gun land, the old West. This country was birthed on people being able to protect themselves.
I don't have a problem with people having guns to go shoot duck and bird and deer and them kind of something.
Yes.
But I mean, when you can have an 18-year-old who can walk into a gun
gun store, and purchase any rifle.
And he can walk out with a rifle. And all them have to produce is in driver's license.
Mm-hmm. And it's so sad that there are so many other things that they cannot do until they're 18. And the fact that they can purchase a weapon, a high-powered rifle, and most of these weapons, we see them turn up in mass shootings number of times.
Well, we have
very crazy.
We have a serious murder problem in Jamaica, but up to now, thank God. I mean, you'll have them gunmen who drive past and spray bullets into a bar and so on. But we haven't had a situation where anybody go into a school and just murder the little picnic them. And I hope to God we don't have anything like that here.
No, sir, we don't want it to get there. Never.
Good to hear you, though, and good to know that your weather is getting a little better.
Yes, it is, sir. I also want to say a happy belated birthday to Mr. Bobby Clark, president of the Bridge 99. A belated birthday shout out to him, and also congratulations to Irish Jam Radio on receiving their honors from the IRAMA Awards for their 30 years of outstanding contributions to the growth of reggae and Jamaica culture.
That's good. That I join with you in that.
Respect.
All right, Bo, we talk.
Take care.
We're talking today about the state of our children, but more, very narrowly and very, very surgically protecting the lives of our children. And we're very pleased to have joining us now to open the discussion on this matter Senior Superintendent of Police, Stephanie Lindsay, who is in charge of communications for the Jamaica Constabulary Force. SSP Lindsay, do we have you online?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Golden, and good afternoon to your listeners.
How are you?
I am blessed.
You know, before I even engage you in the discussion, I just want to commend you because I've listened to you on radio so many times, And I really am impressed at how, sir, first of all, how available you make yourself, and secondly, at how forthright you are in responding to sometimes the tough questions that journalists pose to you. I really want to commend you. I think you're doing a fine job.
Thank you very much, sir. Sometimes I need to hear that. Thank you very much.
Now tell me something now. SSP Lindsay. I get angry when I listen to the news or pick up the papers and hear that some 9-year-old girl was sexually assaulted, and sometimes you hear that her body was found in the bushes. I get angry, because I have 6 grandchildren, you see?
Yes, sir.
And if something like that ever happened to one of them, you would put me on your wanted list. Why is this happening, and what can we do about it? As I said in the opening, we can't put a policeman in every house.
Certainly
To say
not.
when somebody is going to take out a knife and slash the throat of a child. We can't put no policeman in every room to say when a man is pulling down him zip to go deal with a little girl. What do we need to do as a people, as a country, as a society?
Boy, I tell you, it's serious. I think one of the things that we really have to start to see how we can get back to the days when a community raised a child. Because like you mentioned, our kids are becoming more vulnerable every day. And part of the sad reality, like you mentioned, is that they are vulnerable inside their homes. Because I was looking at some statistics, just trying to look at the data, and even the offense that you mentioned, the sexual assault, it is one of the leading crimes among our children. So when you look at the data, I did a compilation between 2017 and 2022, and I came up with 1,899 reports of sexual assault against our children. And when you look at that, and quite a few of those cases are done by people who are known by these children, and some of them are even relatives and adults in whose care our children are. So it is something now that we have to come together as a society to see how much more can be done in the homes where you know that we don't have the kind of parenting and supervision that's necessary in a number of instances to protect these children from these attackers.
But SSP Lindsay, I don't have no expertise in psychology. You probably have engaged that discipline more than I have. But tell me, somebody who decides to sexually molest a child, that's not a spontaneous action. That is something that has to be in that person's mind, no?
It's a deliberate act. It is a deliberate act.
All right. And then when you do it, the effect that it has on that child is something that has to be dealt with. That child may spend the rest of their lives trying to see if they can overcome that. But when you do it, then you turn around and you kill the child? Wouldn't that have been part of the plan from the beginning? So if you're going to do it, it's bad enough to do it and run away, but to kill the child?
It doesn't get any worse than that. And then in most of those instances where you find the children are hurt or killed, it's usually by people who the child knows. There's a matter that because it's before the court, you can't discuss it in detail, but the allegation that's a stepchild. So this is somebody that the child would trust, and that is why it is even more traumatic for the children, because oftentimes when they don't kill the children, then because they are in the same household, so they threaten the children, let them feel as if it is their responsibility, and every day that child has to be in the same space with somebody who is molesting them. It gets bad at times, because sometimes even if they report it to, say, the mother, sometimes the mothers don't believe them. Sometimes the mother, even though they recognize that it is true, they don't report it to the police. In many instances, how the police get to know about it is probably a guidance counselor who is training, observing children behavior, may pick up through their sessions with the children and bring it to the attention of the police. Or maybe it's an instance where the child maybe go to a medical doctor and the doctors will report it to the police. But sometimes even the parents themselves who are aware for different reasons, they don't treat the matter the way it should be dealt with, so the child suffers.
What level of cooperation do you get from family members when you have to investigate a case of child abuse, particularly sexual abuse?
So it depends on the parent. It depends on the family. There are some families that they give very, very good support. Even if it's not the immediate parent, sometimes there are families who, when they find out and they realize that the parent themselves didn't take the appropriate action, they support the process. There are some who will start the process, and for different reasons, they don't continue with the process. So you'll find sometimes, because the molester is the breadwinner for that child and others, then you might find a parent might want to take side and sympathize with the attacker at the expense of the child. So in many instances, though, we do get the support of the parent. And what we also rely on is signs.
And sometimes I imagine it is because they want to avoid the shame and disgrace.
Sometimes, too, they want to avoid it because people will talk, so they tend to keep it a secret and try to deal with it a particular matter. And as police officers and investigators, we are very sensitive of those realities as well. So when we have the sexual offense matters that are being dealt with, we will tell the parent, report it to SISOCA, the sexual offense unit. These are specially trained officers. We don't discuss these matters in the news, even if they make public. There are some cases that are very public, especially if it's a case where the child goes missing and afterwards, and if we find a body and we don't have to make the public know that the child was sexually assaulted, we treat with it through the courts, so as to save the embarrassment for the children and the family. So we are very sensitive of those things, so we make those cases private matters, because even when those cases go to trial, they are tried in private. So there's no access to the public for those trial matters. So for shame, depends on who it is. Sometimes the molester is somebody who is considered to be very prominent or somebody that is highly respected. So in order to save face, there are times when they will try to cover up. But once the police becomes aware of the matter, and what happened now is that it's one of the cases that never gets old. If you were molested as a child and as an adult you choose to come forward, the matter will be dealt with. So
there's no statute of limitation.
There's no statutory limitation to cases of sexual offenses. You can report it anytime. So you'll find that years after, that's when you decide to come forward. And once there's evidence, we will take the necessary
action. I imagine
one
of the stumbling blocks that you face, I believe, would be where an incident happens. Especially if it is a child living in a poor family. A brown paper bag of money will make it difficult for you to get the information that you need to put the perpetrator before the court.
Yes, because there are parents who will tell the child to lie and to change the story. And then when you go to court now, the child gives a different version than what was given in the original statement that led to the arrest of the person.
And your case collapses.
And the case collapses because now your main witness, all the evidence, now it becomes conflict, and you can't convict a person if there is no clear path to say there's no doubt as to what happened. So when the victim changes the mind, it weakens the case.
Well, a police officer told me some time ago that sometimes when you hear reports of a child being found murdered, is because somebody wanted to send a signal to the father or the mother. Somebody have a problem with the father or the mother, and they decide that no, watch me now. But good God, man, at least 9-year-old or 10-year-old.
Those happen, but not in the majority of cases. So, and then some extremes, some people are very extremist. So they will do things they will kill the child and they'll all kill themselves because they want to send a message to somebody. I mean, there are times when relationships are not going very well, and they take it out on the children. So the children become victim of a bad situation, and then the parents weren't reporting the abuse to the police. So you have the parents being abused. Most time it's the female in the relationship, and then the children are also be a part of that. So it becomes a very toxic situation, and nobody is reporting it outside of the family. They tend to keep it. There are times when neighbors don't know or relatives don't know that under the Domestic Violence Act, if they have information of those instances, they can actually make a report on behalf of the victim. Because sometimes it's out of fear, it's out of financial challenges that this poor victim believes that you can't report it, because if this breadwinner goes off to jail, or if you report him to the police, then you feel threatened that he might come back and hurt you and your children. So they live that cycle of violence. But I just want to say to any family that's out there with such an experience, the police, we are prepared to deal with it. That is why we have set up domestic violence intervention centers right across the country to help these victims, whether it's a male victim or a female victim, and the children, to put an end to the cycle of violence.
But what can we do? What do we need to do as a society? Because in most cases, the police only come into the picture when the decomposing body has been found. What do we as a people need to do?
All right. So I believe as a society we need to get involved. We can't no longer say it's not my home, it's not my business. So once you are aware that this is happening, make that call. Call 311. Be anonymous. Tell the police where the location is. Tell them what you know. You don't have to tell them who you are. Just state it, because once that comes to the attention of the police, we are alerted. You get into action. When you call 311, which is Crime Stop, nobody's going to know who called. They're never ever going to ask you what is your name. They're not going to ask you what is your number. They just want to get the information, and we put it into action based on what you tell us. So get involved.
And tell me, does the police have enough authority and power before the crime is committed to get involved and to get involved effectively? Or are you limited in that regard?
We can, because if we hear of the constant quarrel, if we hear about the beatings and all of that, before it becomes a murder, we have the authority to get involved. So our involvement prior to something serious happening might be limited to getting the parties together, having a conversation, confronting them with the information that's available, and develop a relationship with the family, that the police from the Community Safety and Security Department, or even our chaplaincy department, because sometimes we have our peer counselors who go above and beyond, and even the officer on patrol. You get information that this is a home, that things are happening. While you're on patrol, you stop in and check with the family.
SSP Lindsay, can you allow me just take a quick break and I come back to you? Hold for me.
Certainly.
Welcome back. It's Jamaica Live. We're transmitting here on Bridge 99 in Kingston, Jamaica, and we're transmitting as well on Irie Jam in New York. Today we're talking about the protection of our children, the extent to which so many of them are exposed to violence, even death. And we're trying to discuss, identify what it is that we as a society can do. We've been talking with Senior Superintendent of Police Stephanie Lindsay of the Jamaica Constabulary Force. We're being joined as well by Dr. Pauline Mullings, who is the chairperson of the National Child Month Committee. Welcome, Dr. Mullings.
Thank you, son. How are you?
I'm good. But before I let you go, SSP Lindsay, tell me, in terms of your powers of intervention, if you come upon a situation where you feel that a child is at risk, is exposed to danger, perhaps fatal danger, what power do you have to remove that child from that space?
Right. Okay, so as the police, then we have a responsibility to ensure that the children are safe. So, if once we detect that an offense has been committed by the child, against a child, then we have a responsibility.
But suppose the offense has not yet been committed.
Well, if the offense
suppose it's a case where the man hold down the little girl, but she managed to run away, but him out to hold her down again.
An offense was committed. In that case, an offense was committed, and we can. Now, if through our investigation we recognize that the child was not yet molested, but there is the vulnerability and the potential, then of course we work very closely with our different agencies. So we work very closely with our child protection agencies. So where we find that a child is exposed to moral danger or any other situation that is not in keeping with the provisions by law and otherwise to protect a child, then as police officers we report it to our partner. So if it's going to be the child development agency that you were called previously, then we make those reports, and they now will send in an officer to go and examine the situation, look at what they discover. And once they recognize that the information provided by the police and what they pick up through their own investigation, that child is removed from that situation to a place that the child is safer. So it's either that the child could be removed to state care based on their assessment, or if during their investigation they find that there's a relative with a home that can provide the child with that safety and comfort, then they also can remove that child to another household, but they will make the best assessment, taking everything into consideration. So we don't have to wait until things get very bad. We like to come in at the prevention stage, and I think the other agencies that are entrusted to treat with children and the safety of children would want the same thing. So persons just need to go in now and make those reports, make those calls. I was trying to see if I could find the number for the agency, that another agency that we work very
come back to me with that, Stephanie. Unless the commissioner needs you urgently, spend a little more time with me while I bring in Dr. Mullings.
So I'll search for the number and the information.
Yes. Pauline.
While you talk to her.
Yes, sir.
How are you?
I am good. And you, sir?
I give thanks every day. Tell me,
Amen.
The care and protection of our children. I don't want us to be carried away by sensational incidents that happen. You hear about, look at that little boy in Montego Bay whose throat was slashed in a car. Look at the number of cases where children go missing, and next thing now we find a decomposing body. I don't have the data, I don't have the statistics. How are we doing, Pauline? Are we doing better? Are we doing worse? Is it ought this to be a national emergency? What is happening to our children?
We are not doing better, sir. Sad to say. It's under that thought that the National Child Month Committee selected for theme 2023, which is its motto. The motto of the National Child Month Committee was selected as the theme for this, our 70th year, our platinum year. Children need our love and protection. But we added to that, get involved. It's because of where you are and I am at why we came up with that theme, because we are worse than we were 10 years ago as it relates to protecting our children. My reason for saying that is because of all the atrocities that have been meted out to our children in this era, during this time. We would have thought that by now we would have gotten it right. They are the most vulnerable of our society, or they are among the most vulnerable, I would say. But what are we doing? Why is it that so many of our children get burnt in fires? Why is it so many of our children are murdered? Why is it they are raped, they are taken away, they are removed from their homes, they are being hurt? Why? It's because the protection element is not there. The despite all the agencies we have that I believe are working hard, despite what the government is trying to do, despite the policing and all these things, we still find that too many children are hurting and have been hurt. So to answer your question, sir, I do not believe that we are a better place.
No,
to me, it's a
Pauline,
national emergency.
Tell me, have any studies been done to try to determine, to try to identify what is causing the brutality, I just don't know how you take a knife and kill a little picnic. I don't know how you do it. I don't know what kind of madness. But have any studies been done to try to find out what is causing all of this?
Okay, sir. I'm not in a position to say that because my organization to really do studies and statistics. Our mandate is to ensure that the month of May is recognized in Jamaica's Child Month, and that we highlight a theme that reflects the plight of the Jamaican children, and we ensure that we get the message out and across so that others are aware. Here is an issue and we want everyone involved. So I cannot speak to statistics or policies, but I can tell you, sir, that I hear the pain that you have, and I am right there with you, because I cannot understand why is it a nation such as Jamaica, where we love so much, where we are so involved with our children, where we believe so much in God, where we believe in the word, that we should protect our children, we should grow them right, we should treat them good, we should love them, we should suffer them to come to Christ because he loves them, he cares about them. We have Sunday schools, we have Sabbath school. I cannot truly understand why is it we are not getting the lesson as to how to care.
Well, tell me, I mean,
children.
with all the effort that you and your committee puts into the Child Month activities, is anybody paying attention to you? Anybody?
All right.
Anybody bother?
I like that question. I like that question, sir, because we believe that persons are paying attention from the feedback that we would get from the projects that individuals will do, from the engagement and involvement of schools and churches and youth clubs and children groups. We believe that people are listening, we believe that people are involved, we believe that people are recognizing the theme and that they are looking at it, right? The problem is that I do not feel that as a nation, you asked a question earlier and my antennas went off. Your question was, should we regard this as a national emergency? And this is where I think our problem lies, sir. I do not think as a nation we are all getting it and we are all grabbing it and we are all doing what we are supposed to do. We talk about community raising children. We talk about the village raising the child. That was when I was a child, you was a child. We are not there. We are trying to get the nation to go back to that place where every child belongs to me, where I care about every child, the child on the street, the child in the school, the child that I pass, the child. Every child should belong to every adult.
It seems to me not there. It seems to me to have gotten so bad that I would be afraid of my grandpicnic them being exposed to the village. The village may have, you know. Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask SSP Lindsay this. Stephanie, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, sir.
Tell me, from the reports that are made to the police through your 311, your 911, give me some idea. Are those reports increasing in terms of what used to be the case? I'm just trying to see if I can get a feel as to whether or not the public is becoming more alert, more aware, more concerned, and therefore they're picking up the phone and they're dialing you.
All right. So I think they are. I think we are getting more reports of sexual offences and so on, because when I look at the comparison between 2017 and 2020, so we see where we see, as a matter of fact, there are reductions in some of these instances, because I remember somewhere around 2020 where we really ramped up our our public education around sexual offenses and so on. Well, we started sometime about 2018 thereabout, and during that time we saw figures like 329, then it went to 366, then it went to 339, then 315, and last year the number was low, 244. So we see a pattern where when you do the public education, you start seeing people coming in reporting a number of cases, even cases that happened a very long time. And then there was increase in prosecution for the offenses.
What about physical abuse, not necessarily sexual abuse?
So we see where, all right, so when you look at things, so look at the big ones, look at murders. We saw where it's an average. 2020 was a very good year, not very good, but only 20 children. I mean, it's bad. 20 children of the numbers were murdered.
What was 2021 like?
2021 was 37, and then last year 42. So we see and also what we're looking at too is.
Can you give me some numbers? Take last year for example, 42.
42, yes.
How many
children
were
victims.
How many of those have involved criminal charges?
All right, so. I don't have the data now to know how many persons were arrested for those 42 cases of children that were murdered in 2022. But then that number was 42 last year. And I also did a look at to see how many children were perpetrators were implicated in cases of murder as perpetrators, and that number 31. 31 children were arrested for murder in 2022.
Was this murder of other children or murder generally?
I didn't get a chance to break it down to see whether they were children or they were adults. So it speaks to the fact that our children are in trouble. Because when we find so many children being perpetrators, so many children being victims, then we know that as a society we really have to see this as a priority.
Pauline,
Yes, sir.
many years ago, you see, many years ago, I remember visiting a community, and there was one standpipe that served the whole community. And the persons who were gathered around the standpipe, most of them were children. They were sent by their parents with buckets to go catch water. And what I observed was that, some of the boys never want to join the line. So them use the empty bucket and them lick out the daylights out of the children in front of them, and everybody have to just make way so that he could get to the pipe to catch his water. And it occurred to me that is the inculcation of a violent personality. When that child grow big, he will know that if you want to get your way, you can't wait in line.
Yeah.
You have to go on bad. But we as a society, I mean, you talk about village raising children. I mean, I remember when I was a little boy growing up in Old Harbour. And when I got to teenage years and, you can't stay in the house, you want to go on the street. And we used to trampoos all over Old Harbour. If I saw Inspector McLean coming, I have to put my shirt in my pants quickly. Because if he saw me with my shirt out of my pants, by the time I get home, my mother would have heard.
That's the truth.
That Jamaica is gone, dead.
Yeah.
Asking you the question, I'm not making a statement.
Well, I can answer that. Of course, that Jamaica is gone. We're not having it. We're not seeing it, and that's a part of the problem we are having with our children. This is why they are so involved in crime. Like you said, that little boy was taught a lesson because rather than others say, no, you got to go join the line. People were running because he's going to hit them, and it's the same thing that's going on. People don't report a lot of things. Why is it that the police have to be working so hard? People not reporting, people not doing, we're not doing what we're supposed to do to help them, right? And so in that example that you gave about the standpipe, it's typical because the psychological factors that really affect individuals who become violent start within their thoughts and their feelings, and it will come out in their action.
Bear with me.
What they think.
Bear with me, both of you. I have to take another short break. I'm coming back to you.
Sure.
Welcome back. It's Jamaica Live. We're on Bridge 99. We're on Irish Jam in New York. We're talking with Senior Superintendent of Police, Stephanie Lindsay, and we're talking as well with Dr. Pauline Mullings, who is chairperson of the National Child Month Committee. Today we're trying to discuss what is happening to us as a people with the level of violence that is being meted out to our children. And I talk about little children. And I'm talking about these 16 and 17-year-olds who may be in a better position to defend themselves. I talk about what is happening to some of our little infants, defenseless. Stephanie.
Yes, sir.
What is it? What is it that we need to do to make sure that you sit down at your desk and you get idle because you don't understand how you're not getting a report about abuse of children? What do we need to do?
Boy, there's a lot we need to do, but I think we really need to start a national program looking at parenting, because it starts in the home. Because like Doc mentioned, I mean, there was a time when you have a lot of institutions that really raise the child, and an institution that people respect. And even sometimes some of the people in society who made some comments, I mean, the school was a place that you could use to mold and transform. Yeah. And I see sometimes when even some schools try to enforce some simple rules, because a society who doesn't see the need to follow rules. If we can't teach our children to follow rules and to conform to basic rules, such as how you wear the uniform, how the pants mustn't be too tight, the skirts mustn't be too short, and these are just basic things.
But Stephanie, it is worse than that. But Paul, you remember that case? Was it last year? Stephanie, you can help me out. Was it last year that this mother lock up the two picnic them in the house and gone to a party down at Sabina Park? And the house catch fire? Okay, how can a mother do that?
That's true.
We see different things happen, so it means therefore that if adults, we are not teaching children to follow rules, and sometimes you're enforcing the rules and the same parents want to go to school to beat off teacher. I don't know if you see the videos that go around what's happening in our schools, and our school is one of the institutions where at that age, that is where a lot of our young people are developed in the schools, and everything, there's just this level of violence in the society that we have to tackle the violence. We have to start to find a way to tackle the violence. We have to find a way to find some solutions and some way to help parents, because we recognize that a lot of people nowadays who have children, they have never experienced parenting themselves. So even when you say to a young person that you should be a good parent, they can't relate to it. That has never been their experience. So I think from a different way, we have to look at it as a society. I know in the Jamaica Constabulary Force, our officers have done a lot. But it is not really our core function, but because if we don't intervene, then it becomes a bigger problem for us. We probably have to get involved in a murder investigation or a serious injury. So we do it, and we train our officers to intervene in these disputes, but more is needed. And again, it will require all of society. There are some persons who see the problem and just talk about it, would never even look across and say to a child that this is how you should behave. Because children still look to adults for guidance, you know. Some of them do. So it's just that we have to find a way. How do we deal with the violence that's in the society? Because what we're seeing in the children is a reflection of what's happening with us as adults. So it's not beyond us. I believe that we still have the Jamaica and the people in Jamaica that can make it happen, but we have to be committed to the process.
Pauline, we're in the first week of May has gone. What are the remaining activities for Child Month that your committee has arranged?
Well, we are now gearing up for our National Children's Day. Yesterday we had our church service. We're gearing for National Children's Day, which will be on the 19th, Friday 19th, where we'll be celebrating our children the way they celebrate us on Mother's Day, Father's Day, Teachers' Day, Nurses' Day, and all the other days. So we are looking forward to that. We will be downtown at the William Grant Park, where we'll be meeting our children, giving them treats and tokens, hugging them, reminding them how special they are, giving each of them a sticker to wear for the day, which will tell them that they are indeed special. We'll also be going to St. Thomas, to a school where we will be, along with our sponsors, we will be preparing a play field for them because they do not have a play field. So that is what we'll be doing on that particular day. And then right on the heels of that, we are going to be having our National Day of Prayer. And I really wanted to chip in, on that discussion with Sue, because I really believe that the Word of God is standard, and training is missing from the home. We are not teaching good values and morals anymore, and because of that, our children are a mess. Monkey see, monkey do. Children live what they learn what they live, and I'm agreeing with her that a lot of this has to do with parenting. Manners begin at home. You learn to dance a yard before you dance abroad. All these things are coming into light, and what has been happening is that our parents are not trained. We have children having children. We have 30-year-old grandmothers who are not grand at all, and so we are having all of these issues. So a massive parenting campaign where we do some workshops all over this island with parents, I am sure will help, because some people
what are we doing in that regard? I mean, because you have a highway of social media out there now. I mean, you can get to hundreds of thousands of people instantly. What are we doing to use that media or that medium to begin to instill in people? I want people to begin to start feeling guilty, Good God, yes. I really have not been the mother or the father that I should have been.
And that is so, but one of the things that we have to remember about social media, it requires a certain skill. You must be able to read. We do have a problem in some area where some parents will not be able to identify with that. This is why we have to take it a little further. Use up the social media. I agree with you.
But we have more cell phones in Jamaica than we have population.
Yeah, but
now them using the cell phone.
They have to carry.
At least get to those who are using the cell phone, because them couldn't read, them would have the cell phone.
Some of them can only answer for the listeners. A counselor can.
Yeah, but don't let the good be the enemy of the best, no?
Yeah, but it is true that we can use up all our social media. I don't think we're doing enough of that. But I will go back and I will stand up to say that we need this great public education of parenting, simple parenting, what is expected. Like you say, and I agree with you, that's where I am. I want adults to feel guilty, caregivers, parents, teachers, some of us who just doing the bare essential, to feel guilty and to recognize that we can do more. And so on that day, we're going to be having prayer for our children, where our children will join us at the Waterloo Apostolic Church in St. Elizabeth, where we will be praying for them, listening to their requests, what is it that they need from God, teaching them how to talk to God for themselves, and so on, laying hands upon them and praying with them. Because we believe that prayer is powerful and that it can help.
I salute you on that, but we need to do more. Remember, that's a faith without works.
Well, yes, sir.
We're out of time, but I want to thank both of you, Senior Superintendent Stephanie Lindsay of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, and then Dr. Pauline Mullings, Chairperson of the National Child Month Committee. Thank you both for joining me today.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you for having us.
Welcome back. It's Jamaica Live. We're on Bridge 99. Today we're talking about the safety and protection of our children. We had an extended discussion with Senior Superintendent of Police Stephanie Lindsay, and also the Chairperson of the National Child Month Committee, Dr. Pauline Mullings. Me, as I mentioned before, the month of May is observed as Child Month. We have a lot of these observances, Child Month and all kind of months and all kind of weeks. And perhaps have just become little more than just formalities. I question sometimes what impact they have, what effect they have. But certainly in terms of the safety and protection of our children, that is a matter I suggested before that may be a national emergency. The extent to which children are being subjected to abuse, including murder. SSP Lindsay mentioned that last year 41 of our children were murdered. Now we have a population of what? Under 3 million. And some people may say, well, 41 is not a big number, but if it was even one, that is one too many. And based on the numbers that SSP Lindsay gave us, it's increasing, so that this year we may be well over the 41. What's happening to us? What's wrong with us? We're being joined now by Ms. Claudette Pious, who is the co-founder and executive director of an organization called Children First. Claudette, are you there?
Yes, I'm with you. Greetings.
How are you?
I'm blessed, thank you.
Am I being hyperbolic? Am I being an alarmist? Am I exaggerating the seriousness of this matter? I'm not shocked. I just get angry, vexed, when I pick up the papers or turn on the radio and I hear that the decomposing body of a 9-year-old girl or a 5-year-old boy was found in the bushes somewhere. Why is that happening?
I am with you all the way. We have a lot of cases of untreated mental illness. We have drugs. We have family issues that are unresolved. And in a lot of cases, our people just angry more than normal. I think there is I don't know if it's a pandemic or epidemic or what, something going on with our people. They are very angry. And when they become that angry, in a lot of cases, they don't think. Yeah? They don't think. And our children are really under siege.
But why are the children the targets of that anger? Is it because the children are defenseless?
Yes, that's what it is. You can't catch Quacker, you catch him short. Is a well-known proverb that comes to play in a lot of cases. Yeah, I mean, there's a problem with the mother and you can't catch a mother, you lay away the child, which is ridiculous. I mean, we have to now stop. We have to stop. I mean, we talk too much, man. We have to stop the chatting. And yes, I understand that we have to talk about these things first, but we need a whole new re-socialization, a new mindset. What about the value of life, values and attitudes? Yes, parenting, and I want to say ditto to a lot of what the previous person said. But for me, it is about that action piece. How much do we value our children? We keep saying our children are our future, but they are our now. When I talk to the children, they are very upset with us, because they are saying that we are hypocrites. And we lose them long time, and a lot of the children not looking to live to become even teenagers. And that for me is sad.
Claudette, hold for me. I want to bring in Kellie Magnus. Kellie is the Jamaican country lead for an organization called Fight for the Peace. It's an international organization. Kellie, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
What?
And thank you for having me follow Claudette, who will have said 90% of what I
Hi, Kellie.
I asked
anyway,
her the
I'm
question.
usually
I want
happy
to put
to
it.
follow her.
So the question, I want to put it to you. Am I overstating the problem? Is this a problem that exists in most countries of the world, or are we Are we out of line? Are we extraordinarily cruel to our children?
Well, I can't say how we compare to other countries in the world. Fight for Peace only works in 3 very small communities in Jamaica, so I like to stay in my lane. But I will say that we have seen increase in violence against children and just increase in conflict among children in the 6-7 years that we've been doing this work here. And a lot of it is due to some of the bigger factors Claudette was talking about. And I think we've also underestimated how hard COVID was on young people and how hard COVID was on communities that were already vulnerable. And I don't think we've mobilized enough resources to address those challenges.
Expand a little bit on that for me, because I hear it being referred to, not just here, but right across the world. And I'm just trying to figure out why was COVID so impactful? If the children are at home, if they are required to be at home because of curfews and so on, home is supposed to be the safest place.
Well, it's supposed to be, but we know it's not, right? So if you take a young person who is living in a community where there's already a high level of violence, so the mental health challenges from that are significantly high, and school is your source of escape for a lot of young people, your only source of real community, maybe where you have a peer group that you belong to, or where you have teachers that look out for you, that give you the kind of support that you're not getting in the home, where you might have an activity that you're good at, so you might have some opportunity to feel good about yourself. All what people who do youth work call protective factors. For a lot of young people, that's school. School is where they get that. So when you take that away from them for 2 years plus, the multiplier effect from that is significant. And as I said, I don't really feel like we've stopped to really understand that is when you add to that the disruption that COVID would have had on the economic security of the family, you double the hardship. So now you have parents who are struggling more than they were struggling before, who have their own mental health issues to deal with and have fewer resources to deal with it. The whole thing is like a powder keg.
Well, it's the second or third time you have referred to mental health. But for example, of the 41 children who were murdered last year, based on the data that SSP Lindsay gave us, do we have any idea as to how many of those 41 murders were committed by persons with mental illness? You need to forgive me, you see, because I am a little skeptical that the poor mental illness is being blamed for all kind of wickedness that we do. And some of it is because we're just wicked.
Well, I mean, I think you have to try to unpack wicked, right? Because as it turns out, emotionally healthy, fulfilled, supported people do not go around either harming themselves or harming other people. So it depends on what you want, how you want to define wickedness and what causes someone to be wicked. I mean, I think one of the things that I'm hopeful about is that we're paying more attention to mental health these days. I don't know that we've got far enough, but at least we're not writing it off the way we did before. And I think the kinds of questions you're asking are the kinds of questions that we need to be asking. What is causing these issues? Who is looking at the data so that we can figure out what the real problem is and try to prevent things from happening? We're not doing a lot of that critical analysis.
And if I can come in here, I am very concerned about how we use the data. Because, we collect the data, we're not unpacking it, Stephanie said 31 children were arrested for murder. These 31 children couldn't just wicked and bad, so something must be happening there. So we have to stop. It's a national crisis. And we really must stop.
What is happening? I pose this question to both of you. I grew up in an era, and I don't want to get nostalgic about it because I used to complain about it when I was going through it. But I grew up in an era where my upbringing, my socialization was handled by four agents. One was the home, my parents. The other was the community, the people who lived next door. A third was the church, and a fourth was the school. And between the four of them, they kind of establish a framework within which I acquired the values and the attitudes, and I was shaping my character. No matter how much sometimes I believe that the rules were kind of weird and outdated and old-fashioned. But does that structure exist today, Kellie? Or is it broken down?
I mean, I think it exists, but maybe not at scale, if you want to use, hold the sociologist to talk about it. So I work in Denhamtown, Trenchtown, and Parade Gardens, and there are young people in the communities I work in that have access to those four pillars of support, right? The problem is that there's a whole lot more of them who don't. And so, you look at programs like mine, programs like Claudette, I think we are all confident in the outcomes of the young people we reach. The problem is there's just not enough. There are not enough organizations on the ground that are kind of standing in the gap between what we know should be, which is what you described, and the reality.
In those communities and with those kids that you work with, and again I'm posing this to both of you, do you find in your interaction, do you find that the parents suddenly develop a kind of sense of guilt and negligence that really, I've been messing up, I didn't realize how badly I was doing? Do you find that?
Well, I'll let Claudette speak first because she's been working with parents a lot longer than I have.
All right. So in terms of the parenting work, we have been doing quite a deal in parenting. And some of them only come to the realization when you almost hold them in a corner and say, look here, you have a responsibility. And you tell them that them can get locked up and what can happen. I mean, there's a weird don't care attitude. And I mean, having worked with parents who wanted to come to be parenting groups and wanted to do things, so now it's almost as if you're forcing them to be good parents. Is really a contrast. And when you think of the fact that, yes, the CPFSA is there and they're doing what they can and so on, but the whole thing of parenting for some communities is really very new. And we need to look at how do we do parenting. Yes? It needs to be a part of the overall community development piece in our railways. Yeah?
Yeah, and I would say the reverse and come back to the same point. So in the work that we've done, we have been lucky to we keep finding these pockets of amazing parents, and we keep trying to amplify, kind of take a peer approach to parenting and to support them to reaching out to other parents in the community. The problem that we've had is that parenting is one small part of the work that we do, and we've never had enough of a budget to do it at a big enough scale and consistent.
I think we lost Kellie, did we lose you?
Oh, no, I'm here.
No, you're back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
okay.
No,
I was saying,
you left me for a moment.
We've found in every single one of the communities we've worked, we found amazing parents, and we've worked with them to try to do peer support, so parents reaching out to parents. The problem is that there's not enough money for it, and so it was start and stop. The National Parenting Support Commission, I hope the chair will forgive me for saying so, doesn't have enough of a budget to do its own work consistently and at enough scale. In every single one of these communities, there's good parents there who know how to reach other parents, but we need resources to support them in delivering the work that will work in their communities real time.
One of the things I find, let me put this to
Claudette. Before you go, can I just add too that parenting alone can't work.
Exactly.
There are so many other support things that parents need to function efficiently. Mm-hmm. So we really need to look at a whole person approach when we're thinking about parenting, and that is a part of the challenge.
Well, let me then proceed from that point, Claudette, to ask the question. I don't want to beat up on them, right? But,
No.
But follow me now. One of the most omnipresent social institutions we have in Jamaica is the church.
Amen.
In almost every community, you find not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. Are they doing enough? I mean, I know their primary mission is to save souls, but they need to save lives as well, no?
Well,
Are they engaging themselves? What's the point in getting up on the pulpit every Sunday and preaching the gospel? If you have children who are either committing murder, 31 of them last year, or being murdered, 41 of them last year, is there more that the church ought to be doing because of their extensive presence and reach? Or is it that they are preaching to or engaging with dwindling, declining congregations, and therefore they have to be concerned as to how they maintain their own existence? What's going on? Talk to me.
You want me to go?
Either of you.
Yeah, I think Claudette, you had started speaking.
All right. So, look here now. We have tried to engage the church, and we find that the churches, some are reluctant because they are uncertain. When you spend time with them and engage them, they will take it on, but not for any extended time. We find that they are more, because the elderly is easier to deal with, they are more concerned to work with the elderly. They are also more concerned to pray for the children. And, where is the action after the prayer? That's where the gap is. And I think nationally, we need to really engage our religious leaders in a way that they can understand their role in preserving our nation's future through these children.
But would they be prepared from your engagement with them? Would they be prepared, even if they are not, equipped or inclined to become the crusaders? Would they be prepared to allow themselves to be used as a vehicle for reaching those families? You won't reach all of them, because some of them families don't go nowhere. Church.
Yeah,
But if you could get a movement started where people begin to understand that, look, I have a responsibility and I really have not been discharging that responsibility very well. And the church is a platform, is a forum that is so widespread. I'm just trying to see if I can. Of course, backing that up, we need a national program that the government must spearhead in terms of using radio, the social media, every available opportunity. But at the face-to-face level, we need to be able to say to parents. I'm so impressed, you see, I'm pleased. Some mornings I'm driving on the road and I see fathers, young fathers in their 20s, holding a child's hand and walking that child to school. And I said, that's a father. But that is not the norm. Many of the fathers out there don't even know if the picnic gone to school.
Don't even know where is the child. Yeah.
Kellie, are you?
Yeah.
Are you intimidated by my frustration?
No, I'm not intimidated by your frustration. I share your frustration, but the only reason that I have not gone clean mad in the last 7 years is because I trained my brain to focus on the things that are working. So 2 things I would say. We need better coordination and sharing of best practices, right? Because there are churches that are working in communities with high levels of violence that are acting in the way that you describe, right? So there's a church in Prairie Gardens that organizes peace walks. There's a church that we're working with in Denham Town that's developing a kind of internet cafe for young people to use in collaboration with the community group. So we need to find a way to better study the things that are working and share those models more widely so that other such initiatives can get designed. On the point of father participation, I do want to point out that that the statistics show that father participation is at the highest level it's ever been in our history. That's true, and I know it's not where we want it to be, but at the same time, we need to focus on what is working and share those examples. So I am sensitive when people start beating up fathers because it is getting better and better. It has got better and better year on year over, I believe Herbert Gale says the last 5 years or so. So yes, let us hold up more of those, hold up that example and big up those people so that we can try to continue the improvement.
What about at the peer level? What can we do among the kids themselves to sort of get them to band together so that, for example, if a little 9-year-old girl is being sexually molested at home and maybe faced with a situation where the mother, because she can't afford to throw out the man, it is the source of every pot of that is put on the fire. But that 9-year-old girl may be prepared to whisper, tell one of our friends them at school, say, listen, I'm under pressure at home. Are we doing anything to sort of create a kind of peer situation where they look out for each other?
Well, children first have what we call the bashy kids, and these youngsters are engaged in life skill sessions. And believe it or not, our psychologist is overworked based on some of the issues that come to the fore. Mm-hmm. Yeah? I mean, and we're at the primary school level as well, and that's something I'm very concerned about. We wait until the horse gone through the gate. We really need to start looking at violence prevention from birth, from baby, from basic school right up, because in a lot of cases, parents and tell children, if him lick you, lick him back. And that become a big thing, and sometimes it escalates to the community. So we have been doing that. We have been doing life skill sessions with various community groups, with also providing skill training for youngsters who are not necessarily doing well academically. But we teach them to do the basic literacy and numeracy so they can spell and understand the products that they're going to use, and over time linking the literacy and numeracy to the skill area that they're engaged in really create a different kind of mindset around literacy and numeracy. It's not a bad thing anymore. So we have been doing that along with our parenting work.
Kellie?
Same. I mean, we're life skills is one of the 5 components that Fight for Peace delivers here. And I know you're skeptical about mental health, Mr. Goldie, but I have to again flag the need for psychosocial support. In our experience, it is a way that we guarantee the investment of the money that we put in other programming, because 2 things are key. Hurt people. So if you don't find a way to insert yourself into that mix when somebody is in pain for whatever reason, the likelihood of that then turning into that person causing pain on other people is high. The second thing that we've learned is that hurt people can't learn. So if young people are in whether it's a school or in art programs like ours that are after school programs, and you want to teach them skills or you want to engage them in sport, if they are in varying degrees of psychosocial crisis, the money you are spending on the content of that program is at risk if you don't deal with the psychosocial challenges. So I am a huge proponent of making psychologists more widely available, and especially making social workers more widely available, because dollar for dollar, a social worker is one of the most cost-effective interventions you can put in place in this country.
Amen.
Tell me, do we have seen cases all over the world, of course, where social media becomes a tool for interfering with children. Do we have in Jamaica sufficient guardrails against that?
No. That's a short answer. Just no. No. I mean, but I don't know if it's good or bad, but we have not yet sufficiently dealt with the in-person threat to children's safety, let alone the online threats to children's safety. So we have a lot of work to do offline before, not before we address it, because we also need to address online early sexualization of young people, but there are also huge risks offline that we have not yet dealt with.
Do you know whether we have the capacity to do it, the technical capacity? Or are kids just at risk because this is an international technological facility?
You mean in terms of online
stuff? I'm just concerned. You see,
CPFSA has done some work. UNICEF has done a lot of work in this area. We've now done an online safeguarding module for our safeguarding training, and we train other NGOs for free. So the capacity is here. Yeah, but
what I'm specifically asking, I mean, I have a 8-year-old and a 9-year-old granddaughter, no? What I'm asking is, they have tablets, they have cell phones. Are we able to ensure that nobody can be grooming them on social media? Do we have the capacity to do that? Are we monitoring it? And if we monitor it and find it out, can we put an end to it?
I mean, that's a topic for a whole other show, because the number of guardrails that are required there, I again, you have to tackle the same problem from a number of different angles. So we need to do a lot more work with media literacy in this country, not just social media, but traditional media literacy. We need to do a lot more parenting education. I am, as a person who works with young people, I am alarmed by how much information people put online about their children without realizing that they're putting their children at risk.
Well, please don't change.
That's a whole other story.
Don't change your number, because I'm going to call you again.
Because
Claudette. Yeah, go ahead, Claudette.
There is a lot of work have been done by the Office of the Children Advocate and UNICEF, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. Pornography is big. I've been called by schools to come in to talk to the children around the ills of pornography, because look here now, half of the things, they know how to trick the parents. Yeah?
I can well understand that. I'm out of time. But as Kellie has invited me to call her back for another discussion. I'm going to call you both.
Fine, no problem.
But thank you so much, both of you.
Before me, I'm fine. But
Claudette Pious, co-founder and executive director of Children First, and Kellie Magnus, who is the Jamaican country lead for Fight for Peace. Thank you both for coming on. Welcome back. We're on the final leg. It's Jamaica Live. We're on Bridge 99. Today we're talking about the safety and protection of our children. It's an issue that I really think deserves some special focus. We're very pleased to be joined now by Senator Natalie Campbell-Rodriques, who is someone I know personally, and I know that the care and protection of children is something that she's very passionate about. Natalie, are you there? Senator Rodriques?
Yes, are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you now. Thank you so much for joining me. And we're hoping to be joined shortly as well by Mrs. Michelle McIntosh Harvey. She's the acting CEO of the Child Protection and Family Services Agency. And I'm sure that she would be able to help. Are you there, Mrs.?
I'm here. Oh.
Are you online? Mrs. McIntosh Harvey?
Yes, I'm online.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad you have been able. So glad you have been able to join us. Natalie, let me start with you.
Absolutely.
SSP Stephanie Lindsay told me earlier in the program that last year 41 of our children were murdered. The year before it was 30-something. So the needle is pointing north, no?
That it is.
Ought this to be a national emergency? Ought it to be something that we We have over 1,000 people being murdered, and that is an emergency all of itself. But when you're getting reports of 5-year-old and 6-year-old and 9-year-old children decomposing bodies being found in the bush after they're gone missing for a week, isn't that a crisis?
It is a crisis, but what I am about to say you may not like. A lot of persons in Jamaica have become numb to criminality. And so if it is declared a crisis or it is declared an emergency, quite often in these instances when persons have become numb, the society won't respond to it. So you could be talking about a solution that won't have any real effect. And that is what we have to be careful of.
So when we hear it on the radio, on the news, our response is, what a thingy?
That is the problem right there. The response is as though this is just what happened. And it stems a lot from, one, how we view children. If you remember historically, back in the days, children were property. And while we have changed somewhat with that mindset, it is still there somewhere in our DNA. So we don't see it, we feel it for 5 minutes and then we forget it. And that is the reason so many of our children and our youth, and I'm going to use both terms synonymously, they become part of the criminal network much easier than we'd want them to be. And that is a major problem. And one of the things that we have to start doing is make crime less sexy and doable in Jamaica. Right now, crime seems sexy and is quite doable. And, longer sentences, providing other opportunities like now heart programs are free, for example, the surety of being caught. Those are some of the solutions we have to this problem of making crime seem less sexy than it is right now. Less access to weapons. So, using a situation where, for example, I know there was a lot of talk about the 15-year mandatory minimum. But you have to put in place measures. You have to tackle it. I don't know if you have ever read this article by Horace Levy. It was written several years ago. In 2012, I think, it's called Youth Violence and Organized Crime in Jamaica. And one of the points that he made in that article is that there are 4 ways to tackle the criminality in Jamaica, especially among our young people. Assert central authority of the state, which is what you're seeing with these legislation where people are now saying the state is becoming heavy-handed. He also talks about community policing. We need to ramp that up. Attack the gangs and also community development. So if you attack it from those 4 points of view, because I heard a discussion earlier about parenting, etc. Right now, that cannot be Jamaica's solution on its own. So I was happy when Claudette mentioned that is not something on its own that can work, because you have an entire generation that would have to go of the bad parenting that is happening now before we can reap the benefits of parenting programs across the wider society. And one more thing, Mr. Golding, inequality and crime. Caribbean and Latin America have the highest levels of income inequality and crime. And if you go into most, for example, inner city communities in Jamaica, listen to how people say goodbye to each other or they greet each other. They say respect. Respect is a major thing. And inequality leads to disrespect and shame, which then leads to criminality.
Well, let me ask Mrs. McIntosh Harvey. You are at the hub of both the formal state's awareness and response to issues relating to violence against our children.
Right.
How far into the danger zone have we reached?
I would say that we are pretty far into the danger zone, because we do realize from the number of reports that are coming in to our registry, the types of reports, you would realize that I don't know if the activity has been ramped up against the children, or perhaps it's because our campaigns to say make the reports, but our numbers, we are at about 15,000 reports for the year, moving from about 10,000 in 2020. So you find that the activity has ramped up against the children.
Somebody mentioned before, I don't remember if it was SSP Lindsay or I can't remember, but somebody mentioned that most of the cases of violence against children are perpetrated by people they know, family members. To what extent are the victims of violence, child victims of violence, to what extent are those children who were unwanted and resented? Either of you.
Well, to be honest, I am a little cautious using the word unwanted. I would use unplanned. Right. The reason is, in Jamaica, the culture is as such where kids are not necessarily unwanted. Very few children are unwanted because it's a big thing to show that you're not a mule and to show that you can breed a woman to have a child. So there's that distinction between unplanned and unwanted in our situation. And I'm not sure whether or not you're planned or not. It matters with how you're treated quite often, because when a woman, I'm a firm believer that if we had greater women empowerment programs in this country, we would solve some of these problems, because a lot of what happens with our children, yes, it is persons they know who are close to them, who look after them in the yard, or the stepfather, or the father, or the grandfather, or the brother. But what has happened is women sometimes know these things are happening to their children, but they feel they have no other choice because they'll be put out of the yard. They won't get the money to go and buy the groceries. So if you deal with women's empowerment, you solve a lot of the problems that our children face, because women instinctively protect children. But they fear quite often, how will I feed this child? How will I send this child to school if I lose this person who may be abusing my child?
Well, that is one category of the abuse. But let me ask Michelle this: when you investigate a case of violence against a child,
right?
What kind of? I'm not talking about sexual harassment or sexual violence now. What kind of rationale? What kind of explanation does a mother, or a father, or a guardian give for beating the daylights out of that pitney?
Well, I think it's just...
Is it just letting off their own anger? Or they believe that this is necessary for the child to develop properly?
Oftentimes it's just their anger and their frustration. And, you know, as Senator Rodriguez is saying, sometimes they just don't know their options. Sometimes. But there are also the cases of, for instance, if a child is being abused by, say, the stepfather in the home, and just as he said, she reports it to the mother. The mother, because of financial security, will then take the side of the stepfather. And surprisingly, you would find that some of these mothers actually then physically abuse the child. Now, what happens is that child now ends up with trauma upon trauma and starts to act out. Maybe by the time they hit teenage, they start to act out, and we get in all of these things about the behavioral problems being referred to us. But when we check the root of it, it's something like that. And then affects that child's self-esteem. Let's say it's a girl. And so as soon as she can, she says she wants to have her own child that she can love for herself and that nobody can take from her. So you find that now the cycle starts to get, it gets into the cycle, so that by the time she's 17, she has a child.
Let's take the case, though. I mean, that's where sexual activity is involved.
Right.
But when you get a complaint and you go investigate a case,
right,
and you see a child that has been severely burnt with a hot iron, What kind of reason does the perpetrator give for doing something like that?
Mr. Golding, sometimes it comes down to the inability to emotional intelligence, the lack thereof, and dispute resolution skills. The typical Jamaican does not know how to solve a problem without cursing, hitting, yelling.
Right.
That's how we have been taught generation after generation as to dealing with an issue. We don't know enough as how do we solve a problem that's facing us. So we turn that lack of emotional intelligence into abuse. That's what is happening widespread. And which is why we have to learn to conflict resolute. This is something that needs to be taught in the schools, in the homes. But it's hard for it to be taught in the homes when the people in the home themselves don't know it. So we have to find ways.
You're making a lot of sense, Natalie. But let me ask Michelle this. When you investigate a case,
yes,
do you find that in any significant percentage of those cases, do you find that the perpetrator is remorseful? Really sorry what they did, or them just figure that they have a right and an authority to do it?
I would say that the majority are not remorseful. I would say that they have the right, and the thing is that what is surprising,
and it's to them picnic.
And it's their child. But what is also surprising, once all of this cycle is going on, when the child starts to misbehave, oftentimes it's the mother who brings them into us and say, we can't handle this child anymore, you better take them over. And that is a surprising thing. A lot of people don't understand that it's actually the mothers who, once the child has these behavioral problems, are literally coming to us with them and saying, you keep them. Their cases, they'll just walk into one of our offices. The child is there with a bag, and they just walk and leave the child.
Natalie, you're a thoughtful person. How do we address it? And I've asked you that question because I don't want to go all over the spectrum.
Right.
Where do we put the focus? How do we sort of put a laser somewhere that says, well, if we deal with this aspect of it, the others will be easier to deal with and many of them will fall in line?
While I don't personally believe there's any one solution, if I were to target one and one only, I would go with dealing with the issue of inequality. This sense of disrespect that people feel and shame leads them to behave in so many different ways. And a place to start with that is to get rid of the two-tiered education system that we currently have. I believe if we solve that problem, because if you change the education system to a homegrown solution that works for Jamaica and Jamaicans, you'd be surprised because you get rid of the inequality. You could include in your curriculum issues such as dispute resolution. You could teach emotional intelligence. I believe if we do that, we go a far way in solving a lot of the problems that we have.
Michelle,
and
what's your take on that?
Well, hand in hand with that is that what we have been doing, we do find that when we work with the parents, because we have had sessions where once the parents express to us, say, their inability to deal with everything financially, we assist them and show them how to do budgets, show them how to, and if needs be, we assist them to get their sewing machine, whatever, so that they start to be empowered to earn their own income.
Yes.
And usually, once we work with the parents in that way, and then we work with them as a family, where we counsel them and give them some guidance, we find that we have been having quite a bit of success with doing that. But it means boots on the ground.
Natalie seems to be suggesting that it has to be more systemic than that.
True, but we have to do what we can based on the persons coming into us and what they express to us.
To what extent, Natalie, I don't know if you have had a chance to look at it, but to what extent does the Orlando Patterson report address what you consider to be the must-do?
It does address in some aspects. What I like about the Patterson report is that it has gone further than other reports have gone. And I think if we can get it implemented I'm going to be very honest, if we can get it implemented without a lot of the fuss that goes around change in education, we will be surprised at the results. Just a simple thing, for example, because quite often we think abuse is only in the home, but it can happen in the classroom. The fact that the new teaching council bill is going to require that every teacher gets a police record before they get a license is an amazing step in the right direction.
Well, I mentioned on this program some time ago when we discussed the problems in education and the Orlando Patterson report. I pointed out that there are many vested interests that can't wait to get a chance to shred it.
Yes. I think it's a good, thorough report. And I just want to add something to what Michelle said earlier. When you focus the intervention on the poor, there's an implicit acknowledgement there that the problem is that of poor people. You'd be surprised at how many children are abused belonging to middle and upper class families.
True.
Which is why you have to go with a more systemic approach.
True.
You have to be systemic about it, or we're not going to make the difference. Quite often, what the wealthier person does, they don't come and drop off the child at a CPFSA facility. They send the child abroad to go live with an auntie or an uncle.
That's right.
And the cycle continues. So it has to be systemic, and I think if we start at the educational level, stop this two-tiered system, stop this. Do you know that there's one high school in Jamaica, I won't call the name, where the majority of gang leaders in Jamaica are graduates of that high school, and the school is still allowed to run? Do you know that there are some high schools in Jamaica, when you go there and you say to the teacher, how are the graduates doing? And I stood and heard this for myself. The teacher says, boy, they managed to buy a cart and they're doing them things, they're hustling at the market and that kind of a thing. That is their level of success. That's it. And that's what goes into the classroom to teach our children. And this is where now they're disrespected. And it just continues. The disrespect breeds inequality and the shame that we allow our youngsters to embody.
Michelle, what's the state of your capacity to intervene, to respond? Government departments, many of them I know are struggling for lack of staff and lack of resources and so on. But how are you faring?
Well, as with other government entities, we are under-resourced, because if we are getting so many reports per year, so many reports per day, and right now we have roughly 30 to 40 investigators around the island. So you find that their caseloads, what they call their caseloads, are so high. We actually have been in place though a system where we try to look for the high risks and target those. But at some point we have to investigate every single report that we get.
Are you networking with other government agencies that may have
certainly
their presence in those areas?
Yes, because right now we are in partnership with Sissoko right off the bat. We have officers at Sissoko so that when persons walk in with complaints, we are able to, do our investigation and assessment from the social standpoint right at that, in that area.
Natalie, are you aware, there may be, just that I've been sort of off the road for so long that I don't know. Are you aware of any recent serious studies that have been done to try to pinpoint the appropriate intervention and response on the systematic level that you're talking about?
Not really. The last one I know of is the one that was done in 2012 that I mentioned earlier. That one was very, very thorough. I know that Kingsley has also done some work. He continues to work in that area. But I'm not sure of any other study other than this 2012 one by Horace Levy that has some really good information in it.
But you know what is the sad truth? Also, something that we're not paying attention to. Youth development, child advocacy. How many persons working in the area in Jamaica are actually trained in it? And do we have young people being interested in this field of study? Because that makes a difference. Because I am 47, I think. The way I think about some of these things and the way a 25 or 30-year-old think about it, they're going to be different. And you need a cadre of persons across generations.
Sound like that's the topic for another program because we're out of time.
It absolutely is.
Can I thank you both, Mrs. Michelle McIntosh Harvey, the acting Chief Executive Officer of the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, and also Senator Natalie Campbell-Rodriques. Thank you both. You have brought value to our discussions. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
That sort of wraps up the program for today. Thank you all for joining me. I hope to be back next week, Monday. And when we do it all over again, we're talking about something else. We haven't made up our mind yet what that will be. We go from issue to issue. We try to see if we can broaden, expand understanding of these issues, and hopefully to see whether or not we can galvanize some sort of consensus as to how to tackle them and some impetus in doing so. Thank you so very much. I'll be back next week, Monday. It's Jamaica Live, Bridge 99.